Welcome back, folks. You're watching the Ahistorical Gamer, and joining me today is the Wanderer himself.
Hello.
Our great nation of Swordland was rocked by a gruesome murder, and I think we have the man to resolve it and find the culprit.
I'm more than ready. I'm going to bring them to justice.
In the fictional land of Australia,
Yep.
we're also celebrating a recently elected government, so... let's hope that they do as well as we do.
Oh, jeez. That's setting the bar way low, but that's okay.
Okay, and we're back, folks.
Well, not only am I going to solve this murder, I'm going to find out where they're from. I'm going to issue sanctions.
So you expect a foreign third party?
Couldn't be one of our countrymen. Surely not. Oh, I forgot about the display picture. What an absolute king. Look at him.
Yep. We gave him the little pipe.
That burgundy suit. Oh, love it.
Now, your body double has done his best to run the country in your absence.
Yep.
I think you did a pretty good job, Hound.
It's all right. I haven't been to Hawaii and I haven't been bushfires, so it's all good.
Ah, Hawaii. Is that on some new continent?
Yeah, it's in it's near what's that place called? Shieldland.
I see. Now, there's a couple of other decisions that your body double took when you were away.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot of yelling at your wife and daughter.
Well, that's...
He also invested all of your personal wealth into the Arcasian Nintenbob company. And
I was gonna say if he's invested my wealth into NFTs, this guy needs to go.
I believe his exact words were, "I will respect the generality of the president's decisions, but I won't respect his family."
Who hired this guy?
He came recommended.
We got to get better people.
I suppose our wages are pretty low over here. As per your instructions to improve relations with Agnolia, the Republic of Agnolia, we have begun construction of the H1 highway project between Lackavan and Avery. We believe will improve our trade logistics, including with Agnolia.
Lovely. I like it. I like it.
We also gained the approval of General Lancera, who wished to improve military logistics towards the Rumburg frontier over the objection of General Kruger, who believed we needed to invest in heavy rail from our capital to the front.
I'm happy with our decisions.
There appears to be something of a small rift developing within the ranks of the Swedish Armed Forces.
Alright, well, we've got to squash that somehow before it gets too big.
Now, as to the recent murder.
Ah, yes.
Do you have questions regarding it?
Yes. Who was killed? Where and when?
One moment, sir. I'll bring up the data packet now. This was the victim. One Bernard Circas was a Swordish poet, novelist, short story writer, and politician. He was the sole communist member of our parliament, and he was recently killed by a member of the Young Swords movement during our inaugural ball, attended by your body double. As a side note, he was born in the same home city as you were, sir, in Dia.
And do we have a motive yet?
Well, the Young Swords are a right-wing organisation. They object to the atheism and liberal stances taken by Mr. Circus, at least on social issues. They're also fairly staunchly capitalist. There's also the possibility that this was somehow related to our civil war. As you are well aware, the communists and the nationalists committed grave atrocities against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Although in this case, as far as I know, Mr. Circas spent most of the war in exile in United Contana, composing poetries. The motive appears ideological rather than personal.
Unless he was doing something black oppy.
It's always a possibility, sir. You never know with those communists. I'm afraid the gunman was killed in a shootout very quickly after
Do you have
shooting the
anything on his
victim.
body?
We recovered a Swordish 1911 pistol, sir.
And that's it?
Yes, sir, that's all. The only other information we have so far is that he was a member of the Young Swords movement. They are related somewhat to our own National Front party, however, their organisation is far more radical. They personally declare themselves to be a non-violent cultural organisation devoted to preserving Swordish tradition. However, their actions so far have spoken otherwise. There has also been tit-for-tat violence between the Red Youth and the Young Swords, and it appears to be escalating, sir. But back to the murder weapon. The 1911 was army issue, but reported missing during the Civil War. May have been part of a old weapons cache. There's one further element in this, sir. I've spoken at length with Carl Greiser, the head of the Swordish police force. Although small gaps did exist in the perimeter security around the Maroon Palace, it seems rather unlikely that a man could have jumped the perimeter wall.
Someone let him in?
There were small gaps that patrols could have missed, but they were on a constant loop, sir.
Okay, can we do an internal investigation? Is that something we can do?
It's certainly possible, sir. However, I'm afraid in order to do that, we would likely need to increase the budget of our police forces.
Is there any leeway we can give with that?
I honestly doubt it, sir, and we have yet to even identify a suspect, really. There's also the question of who we should rely on within our own internal investigative services. Groups such as the gendarmerie police services fall under the domain of our armed forces and are technically part of our army intelligence services. There's also a dual desire for investigations by the police service and our own internal corruption system. And Mrs. Graff does not like her counterpart in the Supreme Court.
Well, I want an investigation into this, so we're going to have to just tell them to play nice, I suppose.
I'll make sure to mention it in our next cabinet meeting, sir.
Please do.
More reports from the front, sir. Police forces have recently located a wardrobe full of heavy military equipment seized from a Young Swords cultural centre in the city of Jen. Regulars of the place deny having any knowledge about the weapons. The owners of the building have been detained along with 13 other people. Police so far have captured 22 rifles and 2 machine guns. The equipment belonged to the Swordish Armed Forces, dated pre-coup 1929, kept in very good condition.
Wow. Shit.
We also have reports that a Communist Party leader is suspected of plotting a bomb attack. At 11:48, an unattended bag in front of the National Front Party office in Valgan was destroyed by a police bomb squad on suspicion that it was a bomb. Further investigations into the Communist Party leader of Valgan, Milt Hanu, have resulted in his arrest in connection with the incident.
And the NFP, are they connected to the Young Swords at all?
They are the formal political party. They have close ties to the Young Swords movement.
Alright, this is getting out of control. We need...
They're led by a Mr. Kibner, sir. However, he has repeatedly denied, including denouncing the outright violence of Young Swords, and considers, or at least has made public statements that they are an extremist element, not representative of the party.
Alright, we need some diplomacy here. because this is going to get out of control.
There's also reports of illegal firearms found in a Communist Party office in Ribery. 22 men detained so far. Police in Estord are currently working due to rioting in the city. They're currently doing 12-hour shifts to suppress protests. And in Narbel, police report that they are understaffed. Our Interior Minister Lillis Graf has been working hard with the head of the police, Carl Greisler, to address the issue.
All right. Okay. Well, it seems obvious that we do need to increase budget for the police.
We'll make sure to note it at our formal budget meeting in a few weeks' time, sir.
Yeah, we need to do something there. I also want some sort of diplomatic discussion.
We'll do our
tight
best.
Security between the communists and the NFP.
We also have a message from Agnolia. They have diplomatically critiqued what they see as an imbalance in trade between our countries. Concerns were raised over how much more Swordland profits from the net trade in comparison to Agnolia. Prime Minister Van Houten has requested a re-evaluation and renegotiation of our trade deals.
I mean, that's fair. We can definitely look at it.
There's also been a notification from Wayland, sir. President Smolak, dictator Smolak, has warned that any unrest in his country will not be tolerated as it is in Swordland. He also sent best wishes to our police and security forces and wishing them a rapid conquest over disturbing elements in our society.
How nice of him.
Oh wait, hang on. Railway, not the Sorry, I was wrong. We didn't do the highway project. We did the railway. My bad.
Okay. That's all good.
Okay. So, our briefing on security threats.
Mm-hmm. Today's security briefing was arranged in two parts, starting with an internal matters and moving on to external matters after a short break. The Minister of Interior, Lewis Graf, and the Minister for Justice and Law, Nia Morgana,
yeah.
would join us for the first part, the law enforcement briefing. The second part, the Minister of Defence, Josef Lancea, would join with a few high-ranking officials, including the Chief of Armed Forces, Valken Kruger. I opened the door. Lucy and Nia and Lils. Please take your seats. Everyone in the room sat down except for Lucian. He put on his glasses and went through the documents in front of him. Shortly after, he raised his head to address the attendees.
Mr. President, ladies, we will kick off today's meeting with an internal security briefing. I am assuming everyone has been over the agenda. We have all had a busy schedule, so without further ado, I will jump into our first topic. As we feared, the political atmosphere has worsened. The reports around the country indicate that tensions are rising as feared. What is the status of Bernard Circus and the investigation into his murder? I have received news this morning that the investigation into the murder of Bernard Circus has
concluded. Please enlighten us. The more we know, the better.
After further investigation and testimonies, confirmed the motive and also the events leading up to the shooting. A few days prior, members of the Red Youth initiated a violent attack on a Young Swords local leader in Jen. We believe that the young swords then called for revenge, leading to the death of Mr. Circus. He often spoke against the young swords and nationalist sentiments in the assembly. He was a big target.
Political violence needs to stop.
Yes, we've kept it at bay for so long.
What does this mean?
That the communist superpower is meddling in our internal affairs. Several Red Youth members with ties to United Contana have been detained, and the information extracted from them points to a preparation for a communist uprising in Swordland. It isn't unusual for superpowers to influence other nations, Mrs. Graff. But I think this case is a little far-fetched. The left lacks popular support in Swordland, nor do they have significant numbers of armed or trained militiamen. Nia eagerly lifted her hand. I went over the report in detail, but it would be wrong to jump to conclusions about a clear foreign interference yet. United Contana has humanitarian and cultural ties with many countries, including Swordland. It is only normal that...
I trust Miss Graff's judgment. United Katana is clearly trying to expand its influence.
Mr. Rain, we have done our due diligence. Our police chief, Carl Greisler, has linked the funding channel to the United Contana consulate in Benfi. As we all know, the enemies of Swordland are many. We also have threats inside the country.
We need to remain vigilant.
If we give up essential freedoms to purchase temporary security, we deserve neither freedom or security. This is debatable, but yes, we know what more security and surveillance caused to this country under President Sol. Let's not forget that President Sol, God bless him, brought stability after a long period of bloodshed and chaos. Moving on. Our highest internal threat comes from the estimated 20,000 strong Bludish Freedom Front, led by the imprisoned Delwyn Argay. They are a banned political organisation, now a militant force that is trying to incite radical violence.
Are they supported by our Blundish citizens?
To some extent. Luckily they couldn't attract a wide audience of Bloods, but they could potentially attract thousands if anti-Bludish sentiment spreads in Swordland again. Julius pointed to page 3 in the report. Our intelligence intercepted 2 crates filled with weapons close to the Rumburg border. They were filled with military-grade Ka-74 assault rifles. Rumburg has been acting aggressively in the region for a long time. I'm not surprised that they would attempt to weaponize the Bludish people against us. This is worrying, very worrying.
Can we make any direct correlations to blame Rumburg for this?
No, yet we have the suspects that indicate such a correlation. This is grave news, but we must be careful not to stoke the fires of anti-Bludish sentiment. What is the second most important threat? It is the gang violence that is threatening the Nagas and Angland region. 2 prominent organised crime families are at war, and the potential for bloodshed is real.
Which 2?
One of them is known as Coronelli, and the other is the Skinner Cartel. They used to be allies until a recent disagreement. Both are actives in the cities of Narbel and Estord in our northeast.
Well, they're playing with fire, and I want them gone for good.
While I agree it would make Swordland a better place, it will not be easy. These gangs exist because corruption is so common within our country. They buy our police officers and slip by checkpoints to smuggle. Lil sighed deeply. I shall be honest with you. With our current capabilities, we may not be able to prevent the further arming of our separatists while maintaining law and order in Burdia, Nagas and England. You promised to increase Swordland's security and law enforcement budget. Mr. President, you must keep this promise.
I fully intend to. We will keep that promise. especially in light of this information.
We will rid our country from separatists and violent thugs. I wish you would stop using the word thugs, Lilius. The real problem is corruption.
Valid points. Corruption is the root of all evil, after all.
We can look into corruption once the weapons have been found and the gangs have been beaten. Just like previous administrations, kicking the can down the road. This is what is destroying our institutions. Lilius and Nia were openly scowling at each other. Leals turned back to her notes. Well, this concludes the topics of the internal portion. Thank you for the updates, Mrs. Graf, Mrs. Morgner.
Thank you for the overview.
Have a good day. Till next time. 2 ministers left the room. We took a short break before continuing.
Upon invitation, Losef, along with 3 high-ranking officials from the Ministry of Defense, walked into the room. One of the men was none other than General Kruger, the Chief of the Armed Forces. Yosef made his way towards the table while the others stood by the door.
Mr. President?
Yosef, welcome.
I brought General Kruger with me due to the escalation on our borders.
General Kruger stepped forward and saluted. His strong jaw, sharp cheekbones. His tall stature, uniform and medals, combined with his deep and intense stare, made him look threatening. He was in his 70s, yet he had a bulky body that was the result of his commando training. Not only was he the second most decorated officer in Swordland, he was also the longest serving. I'll shake his hand. No, actually, I'll salute him. Not too late.
Actually, traditionally, because you're the commander-in-chief, it's for him to salute you.
Okay.
Because it
well,
goes
in
terms of rank. So, like, if you salute them, like, I'd get it, but at the same time, you're not actually following chain of command.
Okay.
So you salute the more senior person first, and then they salute you back is how it works. His handshake was strong and confident.
Yosef tapped his foot impatiently. He seemed uneasy with the presence of another high-ranking officer in the room.
Gentlemen, thanks for coming to this significant gathering. Let's begin.
Yosef and Valken took their seats at the table while the rest of the officers stood by the door.
Mr. President, the situation at the western and northern borders towards Rumburg is very tense. We are observing the deployments of divisions close to our border. Rumburg has been acting in an increasingly expansionist way in these past decades. They have also interfered with and invaded Agnolia within the last 2 decades. But now they have turned their sights on us.
And what is your current strategy?
Patrolling close to the borders, sir, and keeping Army Reserve divisions close to the border. Seems like they want to increase pressure both internally and externally. Mr. President, if I may.
Please.
The picture is becoming clearer. The latest information from the interior about the weapons caches, and now there is an active military build-up close to our borders. The entire situation was analysed by our General Staff. The prediction is for a future invasion by Rumburg.
I have complete trust in the General Staff.
We will not let you down, Mr. President. The General Staff is composed of the smartest military individuals. I require an increase in the military budget to enlist more soldiers. Over then can we stand a strong chance of defeating our enemies. And enlarged armed forces will hold them at bay. General Valken is right. We do need an increase in the military budget, although we do not see exactly eye to eye on how to spend the budget. The need for an increase, however, we agree on. I have my concerns about Rumburg too. We need strong allies to withstand such a superior power. They are our nemesis. That is an understatement. Times are changing and war is coming, Mr. President. Whether we like it or not, we must be prepared. During the election, you said nothing about focusing on the military. I ask you to reconsider and to increase the military budget. The future and safety of Swordland is in your hands.
As you said, times change, Yosef. We will see.
Our forces would crumble under a decrease, and Rumburg would be much more compelled to exploit our weaknesses. Our country hasn't fallen to any invading force for 200 years. You cannot let it happen, Mr. President. We should find regional allies like Valgsland or Lesbia to deter Rumburg. There are several options on the table.
That I'm into.
We could also ally with Agnolia. They're a natural ally, sir.
I think Agnolia is a great bet.
There is also communist Valgsland.
Where is Rumburg exactly? Let me see.
Capitalist Arcasia. So this is the territory of the Queen of Rumburg. Okay. And by the way, this map doesn't show half of it. Rumburg is absolutely massive. They have a population of 121 million. Compared to our own population, which is about 50.
Right.
There's also the possibility of joining with one of the superpowers, either the Communist Bloc or the ATO alliance, but not NATO.
Tell me about the ATO alliance.
Joining international military alliance would bring sacrifices to our own independence in foreign policy that one shudders to think. True, but what is the difference between losing your independence to one or the other?
Everyone fell silent when a soldier entered the room and let Yosef know that a call had come through from the ministry.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Yosef left the room to answer. A few minutes later, he entered the room again. His expression had changed.
Mr. President, there has been a Rumburgian military activity close to the Narbel border. I just spoke with a local commander. Falcon, we should go to the ministry and get further updates from our branches. Understood. Raising military readiness is the first call of action. If there is truly an extraordinary attempt, we will relay it to you immediately and wait for your further orders, Mr. President.
Make sure they know that we're observant and ready.
Always watching, always ready is our motto, sir. Hail, Swordland! Hail!
They saluted and left the room. Rumburg was already testing us, and the reports from the interior indicate interference inside our borders. Communists, nationalists, British rebels, Rumburg expansionism? What the hell was next? Swordland had always been a key piece in the chessboard of the global rivalry between Arcasia and the United Contana. But in the recent years, there was no such aggression from Rumburg, not at these levels at least. All it takes is one tiny spark to start the flames of war. The phone rang. Rumburg had decided to close their consulate in Lockhaven. Okay, this is...
Arcasia has recently developed a new ICBM. Our military intelligence reports that Arcasia has successfully tested one of their Missile 4 intercontinental ballistic missiles. Arcasian missile capabilities have significantly increased, posing a threat to the territories that are further away from Western Makopa. After that troubling meeting, time for dinner with the family.
Alright.
Do you have any thoughts on the meeting, sir?
I'm honestly thinking I want to prioritize more towards the police side of things.
Internal security, sir.
Yeah, because if how are we going to fight against Rumburg if we have a cancer eating us from the inside out?
Carrot and stick, sir?
Can you tell me more about not NATO?
A moment, sir. So, the Republic of Arcasia is a constitutional republic in the western half of Makopa, so they're on the far side of this continent, and they are considered a superpower of the world. Their capital is Ventry City, a global city which is regarded to be the financial centre of the world. Led by its centres on Bridge Street, the Bridge Street elite. And its current president is Dwight Walker. He is also the chairman of the Arcasian Treaty Organization, a defensive alliance formed to halt the spread of what they classify as communist aggression, although they have recently been responsible for a variety of coups and regime changes among nations that they felt were too socialist-leaning.
Thank you for that.
Any further questions, sir?
Not at this time.
Dinner with the family it is.
After a long day at the palace, I was finally home. I thanked Serge and walked through the front gates, nodding at the two guards as I went by. Even as I turned the doorknob, I could hear Deanna rushing down the stairs to greet me. I opened the door and there she was, standing in front of me with expectant eyes.
Papa, you're home!
There's my little bright one. I lifted Deanna up and hugged her while trying to put the keys in the tray next to the entrance. She was growing fast. Lifting her up was no longer as easy as it once was. Where's your mother?
Mama's in the kitchen making dinner.
I put her down and her expression turned serious.
Papa, are the bad men gone?
I will never let anyone hurt you ever.
Okay, Papa.
Deanna dashed down the hallway.
Mama, Papa's here.
Monica appeared next to the kitchen door. She was wearing an apron and holding a spatula in her hand.
Deanna, what did I tell you? No running in the house. Yes, Mama.
Monica approached me and kissed me on the cheek. A tantalizing smell wafted from the kitchen behind her. Darling, you shouldn't have. What do we have a cook for?
I felt like going grocery shopping, just the old times. And besides, she can't make your favourite like I can.
You mean...
Yes, Zalba.
Zabla was one of my hometown specialties, a chickpea stew topped with beef braised in tomatoes and birch and spices, traditionally served in a clay pot. That sounds fucking delightful. It was absolutely my favourite dish, especially paired with cabbage? Cabbage? Is it cabbage?
Cabbage? Yeah, I guess so.
Cabbage. A potent, unfiltered wine from my region. Unfiltered? Damn. It's my lucky day. What's the occasion?
No occasion, just wanted to cheer everyone up a bit.
The smile faded. She lowered her voice so that Deanna wouldn't hear.
Especially after what happened at the ball. I'm worried, Anton, for you, for the children, for the country.
Deanna suddenly appeared next to us. She spawned.
Mama! Yes, sweetheart? I'm hungry. We'll eat in just a minute, dear. Will you help me set the table? Anton, you can tell Frank to come down for dinner. He's been sulking in his room all day.
Monica started taking out the channel while I headed upstairs to fetch my son. Loud rock and roll music echoed down the hallway from his room. I caught a faint hit of sinker. Oh, I'm gonna clock this little prick. I'm just gonna actually, you know what? No, we'll respect his privacy. Knock on the door. No response. Knock on the door one more time. Now I'm gonna open the door. Or bang on the door.
All right. What do you want?
How old's this kid meant to be?
I think graduating year of high school, so about 18.
Okay. Food's ready.
Great, I'm starving.
Frank headed downstairs and I followed after. The table was prepared and Monica was ladling food into a plate.
Come on, have a seat. It won't be as tasty if it's cold.
As we started eating, the room went quiet. Monica's cooking was as delicious as ever, but I had the feeling that wasn't the reason nobody spoke. Monica was the first one to break the silence.
Hey, did you know that they refurbished the grocery store? I don't know if you remember the owner. He's been there every day for the past 30 years. Can you imagine doing the same job for so long? What if you were president for 20 years, for example?
20 years of this, I'd be dead. Oh, shit. Whoops. Daisy. I realised my poor choice of words too late. Monica looked down at her plate.
Anyway, the grocery store really is a nice person. He threw in some extra vegetables with my...
Frank suddenly slammed his hands on the table, rattling the chop. Monica and Deanna and I stared at him.
So this is how it's going to be? We're just going to sit here like nothing happened? Dad, you could have been killed. Mum could have been killed. Any one of us could have died.
Deanna's lower lip started trembling. Monica put her hand on Frank's shoulder. Frank, you know I would never let anything happen to you, Deanna, even if it cost me my life.
I know, but still, can you at least tell me if something's being done about this? It was real close, Dad.
It was one rogue shooter. We were not even the target.
But what if we were? Frank, listen to your father. If your father says we don't need to worry, then we don't need to worry.
Monica turned to me.
You have to trust each other.
Things calmed down a bit at the table. We finished our food in silence. Frank got up first, retreated back to his room. Monica lifted Deanna up and plopped her in front of the TV before returning to the table. She sat down across from me.
Anton, he's still young.
I know, but there's not much longer we could shield him from the ugliness of the world.
Scared, Anton, and frankly, he's not the only one.
I promise if there was truly any threat, you'd be the first to know. She got up, stood behind me, and massaged my shoulders for a moment before leaving me alone in the dining room. I sat alone at the table and drained my glass of cabbage. Had I been lying to Frank and Deanna? Was the threat to my family truly over? Time would tell.
So, Chief Strategist Lucian Gallade has prepared a series of contingency plans to deal with the continuing unrest in the country.
I want to expand the police, so let's deploy all the recruits in training.
Late evening.
The Marine Palace was finally getting somewhat quiet when I returned to my office at the top. I eagerly approached my chair and sprawled out on it. It had been an exhausting day, just like every day since I took office. Light a cigarette.
Oh, you're not going to go for the quit smoking ending?
I lit a cigarette and smoked it for a while. That answers the question. It helped take my mind off the work stress for a minute. Smoke only rose towards the tall ceiling. I glanced outwards at the window and Serge and the guards waiting for me by the main gate.
Was your
I had a couple of
secretary?
knocks. Leave us, she answered. Okay, yep.
Mr. President, Mr. Tusk is here to see you, sir. You had a meeting with the Lothberg Group spokesman, head of the business council. I'm so sorry for not giving you proper notice.
Don't worry about it.
Thank you for understanding, sir.
After a moment, Mr. Tusk swaggered into the room. So let me read about this guy. He's a millionaire businessman investor. So what's the Lothberg Group?
It is a private association of wealthy businessmen and oligarchs. They tend to provoke lower taxes and privatisation, including of current state assets.
So is this group a cesspool for corruption or not?
It's certainly rumoured, sir.
Alright, guess I'll be careful. I met Solon's most prominent businessman once or twice, but never alone. He had large jowls, blindingly shiny shoes, and the air of someone who's used to getting his way.
Thing to drink, Tusk? Water? Whiskey? Cognac, preferably from before you were born, sweetheart.
So is it Tusk or Tusk?
I like to pronounce it Tusk.
Tusk, okay.
But it seems a bit more foreign.
Walter Tusk sounds like a Spider-Man villain.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, yeah. It made me think of Captain Planet, to be honest.
Yeah, true.
I'll check the supply room, sir.
Livia backed out of the office, shooting me an apologetic look as she did so. Walter hung up his hat, which I could see was lined with ink. He fixed me with a long hard stand and broke into a toothy grin. Here we go.
Good evening, Mr. President. I am here to congratulate you My business partners and I wish you a successful term as the leader of our nation. I had no chance to say this at the ball with all the panic, but we are very much looking forward to working with you. I'd like to build a profitable relationship between us, sir. That being said, there are some concerns of mine and of the people that I represent, which I would like to take this opportunity to clear up.
I'm listening.
The ruined state of the economy in Swordland has influenced everyone, and the recession has hit us all hard.
Walter pulled out a box of cigars from his jacket. It hasn't hit everyone that hard, I'm guessing.
I had these brought from Lesbia, sir. Best cigars in the whole continent. Would you like to try one?
You go ahead. I don't want to smoke. I just had a cigarette. Walter grabbed himself a cigar and he lit it. He looked out towards the city scenery as he puffed away.
I heard that you purchased stock in the Nintenbob Industries electronics company. Smart buy. They are developing new gadgets that are going to be very profitable.
Spend money to make money, they say. See if it holds true.
You'll be surprised at what one can achieve given the resources in capitalism, sir. I will buy a couple of 100,000 shares too to expand my portfolio. Hope the investments pay off for both of us, Mr. President.
You reckon people actually talk like that? Like they actually talk about, like they say capitalism in actual sentences to each other? Like, you know what I mean?
At a meeting like this, yes.
Suppose.
And remember, this is also set in the 1950s when, like, this was much bigger.
I keep forgetting that. Yeah, okay. Cool. His eyes wandered away for a moment.
Like, it's sort of drifted outside of the Overton window. It's just kind of, like, accepted. But remember, like, and there's also not been a Second World War in this universe.
Mm-hmm.
So movements like fascism, for example, are still kind of present.
Yeah.
So like certainly the Young Swords, and to a lesser extent the National Front, have sort of fascistic leanings, if you get what I mean. So there's sort of debate over like what sort of capitalism's place in the world, what about liberalism. So this is actually something that would have been discussed between a senior business leader and a president at this point in time.
Gotcha.
You are having a good start to the term for sure, besides the recent troubles. Glad that you have decided to promote the free market, which is the only thing that can get us out of this mess.
It's good that we think alike on the matter.
To a closer relationship then. One that will bring Swordland out of the crippling recession. A high-speed rail investment. That was a great decision. The business logistics will be improved and boost the economy once finished.
I don't want to disclose our intentions to an outsider.
That's a fair point. But why distance yourself from potential friends here, Mr. President? We can be close allies. The group can help you get Swordland out of the recession, which will be a key problem to solve in your term, and it could even determine your re-election. Let's start with a gesture of goodwill. Soon, the investment project contract will be awarded to one of the three main contenders.
He pulled a check out of his pocket and slid it towards me on the table. Here we go. My personal bank details were listed on it and a deposit of 500,000 Swordish Ren ready to be transferred. This was 6 months of the president's salary.
If the contract is somehow awarded to the Underhall Construction, they, which is, by the way, it's his personal company, so Tusk is the owner of Underhall Construction.
Of course he is.
Not only would they work hard and deliver, but they would deliver on time, Mr. President. What do you think, Mr. Rain? Wouldn't that be good for both of us?
Put his index finger on the check. There was a noise by the door. Olivia was standing there holding a tray with a bottle and 2 glasses.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Tusk, but all I could find was a 1942 Savigny. I hope that's acceptable.
She quickly put the tray on my desk and walked out. Tusk eyed her as she left.
Remind me to visit your office more often. Now, where were we? Did we have a deal?
Did you just try to bribe the president of Swordland? I refuse. Walter sighed and put the check away, putting it in his pocket. Oh, let's see, hang on. If this is what you came here for, then we're done here.
My goal, Mr. President, was to begin a mutually beneficial partnership. But besides that, it's still good to spend time together. Oh, I almost forgot. Please say hello to Mr. Caronti for me, if that's who you're making your deals with.
He smiled.
Have a good evening, Mr. President.
Walter stood up, grabbed his jacket, and made his way towards the door. Closed the door behind him, I gathered my things and prepared to finally head home. As I walked out, I noticed Livia still there, covering up her typewriter for the evening.
If I may be so bold, Mr. President, did you accept his offer?
Of course I didn't. How could you even ask me that?
The other girls have told me all kinds of stories about what went on during the previous Alfonso administration. I wasn't sure if you were that kind of president.
I most certainly am not. She and I took a moment to look over at the lights of the city before heading to the elevators. Alright, what have we got? We've got something's happening in... Oh, yep.
The situation on the border is getting tense. Rumberg's Southern Army was sighted in a training exercise close to our borders and did not respond after we issued a radio message. Chief of the Armed Forces, Valken Kruger, reports to have increased patrolling duties along the northern border to signal readiness. Might I just say that this game came out before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and it hits so much harder.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's like in hindsight, really hits different.
It's literally life imitating art.
100%.
If I can just say, Rumberg is kind of an amalgam country that mixes basically Russia and Imperial Japan.
It's scary. What's happening in... Is it Conriat?
Conriat, our port city near Holsword. This is with Mr. Caronti. He's another member of the Lothenburg group.
We were headed up to the meeting location set by Mr. Caronti. The motorcade was made up of the most confidential and trustworthy team. After a few hours of driving along the river, we took a turn before entering Conriat. The darkness started setting in as we drove up the hill. Where are we, Serge?
We are nearing the Heart of Swordland Country Club, Mr. President. Heart of Swordland, by the way, is an industrial conglomerate, but it also runs the nation's largest newspaper and television network.
Oh, Jesus. It's the Murdoch media.
Yeah. We'll be there shortly.
We arrived at the big iron gates of the country club. They opened.
I like that you pointed out it's the Murdoch media, like you went straight to it.
Well, you just described what the Murdoch media was, so of course you better go straight to it. We arrived at the big iron gates of the country club and they opened. It was huge and outright extravagant. The main building, inspired by lesbian architecture, was lit from all sides. It was rather chilly. I was approached by Mr. Vectern and Lucien.
Yeah, Peter. Or Peter.
I wasn't sure if I was thinking it was Peter or Peter, so I just went with Mr. Vectern.
Like add a kind of silent Y in there, Peter. I hope your journey was comfortable, Mr. President.
Wasn't bad. Looking forward to the meeting.
I am sure it will be worth our time. He is a Caronti after all. Let's get personal. Let's.
After opening the marble engraved wooden door. Damn, that's opulent. We were greeted by two tall women. The receptionists led us to the meeting room upstairs. Marcel was standing by the window looking outside at the beautiful complex. He turned around to have a quick look at us both. But isn't there three of us here?
Well, he's looking back at... I don't know, got two companions. Yeah, I get what you mean.
Just got confused. He was a really handsome man. Well-groomed hair. He walked towards me with his hand.
Actually, I think I know why. Because I understand why it had that little hiccup, because you can choose to not bring Lucien.
Ah.
So that was a judgment that was made by your body double.
Yes, the Shadow President.
Yeah, the Shadow President. He was a handsome man.
He was, with well-groomed hair. I'll reach out for a handshake as well. He had a firm grip.
Such a pleasure to meet you in person, Mr. Caronti. I appreciate your efforts to reach out for a mutually beneficial friendship. Thanks for hosting us. I admired your father very much. May he rest in peace. Welcome. Your kind words have touched me, Vice President. He was indeed a great man.
Please accept our condolences.
He would have been very happy to hear this from you, Mr. President. It's time to look forward, however. Let's talk about our bright future.
Let's have a seat. Marcel gently pointed at the seats. We sat down around a gigantic table before speaking. He knocked on the wood.
The past months have been tumultuous, to say the least. I am glad your family were unharmed at the shooting. The whole incident must have been a shock for the kids. They aren't used to what we lived through back in the late 20s. I remember when my father took us out of the country when it became too dangerous in Conriat.
Yes, they were startled, but the important thing is they're safe and sound.
I like it how you can basically call him a draft dodger in this scene.
Yeah.
Of course, it's all that matters. No family should suffer from tragedy ever again. Our nation has had enough of that. Well, I am known to be a straightforward person, Mr. President, so let me get to the point without wasting your valuable time. It was during the Alfonso campaign I was struck by what you have done with the party.
Marcel started to look at one of the paintings on the wall. I'll look at the painting as well. The famous piece depicted a giant sleeping beneath a village. The trees, rivers, and hills were all part of the giant's body.
I really liked this part.
Its eyes were two caves. Looking up at the people, it showed daylight at the far left and nighttime at the far right. The giant seemed to be watching the village. It was totally unbeknownst to the villagers. Its eyes were two caves. Looking up at the people, it showed daylight at the far left and nighttime at the far right. The giant seemed to be watching the village. It was totally unbeknownst to the villagers. Marcel pointed his finger at me.
You said that we will transform this nation, Mr. Rain. My conglomerate has a way of doing things and I don't want them to change. And by the way, can we just think about the painting and what it's trying to say?
Yeah, that he's the giant.
Yeah, and he's kind of secretly influencing the lives, but it's his choice. He's choosing not to, but he has immense power. Should he wish to use it, he can turn the world upside down. So, I want to cooperate with you.
Please explain further.
You might have the people's support now, Mr. President. But what happens when you make mistakes? Everyone makes mistakes. What's that supposed to mean? Let's hear the point, Mr. Vice President. Being a president in this country means having many enemies. Enemies would resort to anything to bring you down. Let's say these enemies caused a scandal or leaked sensitive information from the administration. These would be destructive when they were released. If they were released.
Are you threatening me?
Absolutely not. I am merely offering a helping hand.
And what do you want in return?
I want two things, Mr. President. I need an unspecified favour, a gentleman's favour.
And how do I know I can trust you?
My circle advised against this. They don't even know we are meeting, Mr. President. We have both put ourselves at risk here, but I am willing to trust you. Question is, are you willing to trust me and accept this offer?
Mr. Currenti, I have to reject. I don't respond well to threats.
Such a shame, Mr. President. And I thought we were going to be good friends here. It really is a shame.
Sure, sort of blew that chance when he started trying to strong arm me. I don't respond well to that. Goodbye, Mr. Currenti.
Get out of here.
We left the complex and entered the car.
I hoped that it would have ended better.
He pushed it too far.
I agree. The threats were unacceptable.
We can go back to Holstor. What's happening in that little town?
Situation. Oh. It's disturbing. One of our agents acting as a young swords member had an encounter with two members of local police in Anrika, Alson Bolar and Viezer Nizik. According to the report, the policeman tried to bribe the agent to burn down a store that belongs to a known Communist Party member and to instigate further violence. Jesus Christ!
Fucking hell. Well, at least we got them on corruption charges.
How deep does this go, Mr. President?
Yeah, I'm starting to think I need to completely just refresh every single member of every fucking department in the fucking government. So what's happening? What else is happening there?
An internal corruption purge, sir?
Would love that.
We could certainly work towards it. We will have to choose our allies carefully, however.
It's exactly what I'm going to be going for. What was the was there something about the railway in the town as well?
There was. I'll just quickly go over the reports.
Oh, cool.
So Kasaro Kibna, head of the National Front Party and ally of the Young Swords movement, has made calls for a state of emergency to be declared throughout the nation. and martial law, potentially. He has stated that Swordland could be destabilized and the integrity of the country damaged if we do not act harshly with demonstrators.
Let's go with the railway. We arrived in Enrica by train. After being greeted by the cheerful citizens and local government officials, we headed for the city hall. Here, a significant meeting about the L1 project would take place. Several construction companies sent their representatives to the hall.
Ah, this is what Tusk was trying to bribe us about.
Yep.
Hello, Mr. President. Good to see you again. Appreciating you taking up my offer on the stock investment. Inten Bob is a very promising corporation, and if everything goes well, you'll make solid returns.
Let's see. Thanks for arranging the opportunity.
Oh, you left out the booze? You're a teetotaler?
No, that goes without saying.
My pleasure, Mr. President. I'll be looking forward to the maroon because it is a guaranteed.
Good stuff. Simon Hall joined us, and after settling down, we moved to discuss the details of the railway project.
I came with the train yesterday and it was a little uncomfortable. Besides starting our economic recovery, the train journeys here will be much more pleasant, Mr. President. That's a given now. This project will improve so many things, ranging from logistics to growth. You made the right choice for sure.
I hope so, Gus, because I didn't make this decision.
My rural development plans will be partially completed by flocking new businesses to the area. Thank you. According to my estimates, the project will give about 50,000 citizens from the greater Holsword and Gelsword areas employment.
What will it take to stop the recession?
This is just the beginning. We will need to follow this project up with several other economic investment projects, which is dependent on our government budget, right? Yes.
Simon searched for the documents he was holding and found the one he was looking for.
I have the overview of the companies here.
Simon handed over the files to me. Let's take a look. Okay. Swordish State. Underhall is Tusk.
That's correct. And Taurus is an Arcasian company.
Okay, and Swordish State, is that the other
Yeah,
bloke?
that's a national company. Historically, they have conducted nearly all of our buildings, and they were responsible for rebuilding most of the country after the Civil War.
And is the Country Club Wanker part of that?
No, this is owned by the government, sir.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
In fact, nearly every public building in Swordland was built by the Swordish State Corporation. It's only recently we've begun putting out these contracts to private tender. As part of President Alfonso's liberalisation and privatisation plan.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me more about Taurus Holding?
We will have the briefing further, sir.
Okay, good. All good.
But they're a fairly recent company. They believe in the use of advanced technology, and they're foreign owned by Arcasia, or by the privately listed company from Arcasia.
Gotcha.
I have done a variety of international projects before. However, this will be somewhat larger than what they're used to working with. Which corporation should we talk about, Mr. President?
Taurus.
Taurus Holding was founded in 1946 and is owned by entrepreneur Gerard Fays. It's a new holding company whose subsidiaries use cutting-edge technology from Arcasia to reduce the construction costs and prices. They are known to provide for their workers who are part of the Labour Union of Swordland. That is a very interesting corporation, especially because of their innovative construction methods. They aren't suitable for large projects like these. This would be their first.
Why shouldn't we go with Taurus?
To be frank, what was the largest mega project they worked on? I don't even remember. Shook his head. Choosing this corporation would be a major risk on a project like this. Things can go wrong, Mr. President.
Their capabilities matter more than the history they have. Yeah, we got to be unbiased here.
They took a joint contract in Arcasia for restructuring the highway intersection, one of the major cities. Went well, but that is their only previous large-scale success. If we are going to try a different company, this is the most unique. Project manager from Taurus Holding mentioned that they would be able to finish this project with the allocated funding. They are the only company who found the budget sufficient, making them a cheaper alternative.
I've settled on Taurus Holding because I don't want to deal with Tusk, and the other one has a corrupt management. So
how do you know it's corrupt?
go back to the go back to them in the codex.
Oh, good. You actually read. That was a quick reading. Good. We're staying consistent with our economic strategy.
Simon signed a certain section of the dossier and fixed his classes.
Very well, Mr. President. The contract will be awarded to Taurus Holding. I wish the outcome of this meeting was different, but at the end of the day, the success of this project is what matters. The company will be notified today, and the construction work will begin immediately after.
Fantastic. Take a look at the Swordland other company, just to bring that up. Swordish State,
State. Long and solid history. Okay. Seems to have dropped due to a recession and somewhat corrupt management structure.
Yeah, and I don't want to deal with Tusk because he's corrupt as well, and I'm trying to eliminate corruption, which is why from the get-go I was going with Taurus.
Fair enough.
That's great news. Good luck to us.
Sorry.
Nah, you're right.
It's basically the same. My expectations for a grand opening ceremony are for later this year and late next year. I'll be returning to my duties. See you soon, Mr. President.
Thank you. And this concludes the meeting. It's very refreshing to attend cultural dances and hear the traditional Swordish music of the region. I'd love to know what Swordish music sounds like.
I thought there was like a riff of it. Certainly it is like written down. But apparently you like need to be able to speak Turkish to like actually understand it, so...
Gotcha.
This game was made by a company in Turkey.
Okay, cool.
This is the economic relief plan.
Nah, let's get public spending going. I want to provide stimulus for people in need.
Budget decreased by 1, and the economy remains stable. I think... Oh, that's it for this turn. Oh no.
Oh no.
Ah! The funeral for the deceased.
Yes, the funeral.
Kind of a horrible irony, really. He was born here, and now here is where he'll be laid to rest.
Yeah, if it's a state funeral, so we're definitely going to attend. Dark clouds were looming over Dia. They looked daunting as our convoy started approaching the century-old cemetery. It looked like it was going to rain, certainly fitting weather for a funeral. As expected, Bernard's passing maintained its media attraction, and all of Swordland was paying attention to the ceremony, especially what I would say in my speech today.
Sir, we've arrived.
Raindrops were running down the car window when Serge opened my door and held an umbrella over my head. As soon as I got out, flashes from the cameras blinded me. That's okay, Serge. I'll hold my own umbrella.
As you wish, sir.
He handed me the umbrella and started waiting next to the car with his own. Pt3 and Carl exited from their own cars in the convoy. They made their way over to me.
Anton. President. I just wanted to inform you that the perimeter is clear. There will be no slip-ups this time. It is completely secure, sir. No one gets in or out without my knowledge.
Good work. Thank you, Carl.
Bowed his head in respect. Ah, good. If anything happens to Anton, you'll have to answer to the First Lady, Mr. Greiser. And trust me, Carl, you don't want that.
Peter let out a laugh and drew some attention from bereaved attendees. Oh, God. I'm going to gesture Peter to lower his voice.
You're right. Sorry.
It started to rain. Several unintelligible voices were heard from Carl's radio. He stepped out to reply and returned shortly.
We have a small problem, sir. A few, 5 to be exact, Red Youth members are known to be here to attend the funeral. They apparently said they wish to pay their respects to their fallen comrade. Should we let them in?
Do you think they pose a security threat?
No. They were thoroughly searched. It looks like they really are here to attend the funeral.
Let them in.
As you command, sir. Let's head over. They're about to start.
We walked towards the crowd and circled around the grave. Everyone in attendance was wearing black in mourning. The rain started pouring heavily. Bernard's widow and daughter were in the front row, staring at the coffin with a mixture of disbelief, confusion, and above all, a cold, unforgiving sadness. Both their eyes were very red and swollen from weeping. Before taking my place to observe the ceremony, I gave my condolences to Bernard's wife and his daughter, who looked at me. She reminded me of Deanna. When the religious ceremony was done, I was invited by the priest to deliver my speech. I took the podium. I felt like I had a lump in my throat. Couldn't get the daughter's eyes out of my head.
Actually, a really interesting symmetry that you picked in your backstory, that you were born in the city of Dia, just like Circass was.
Yeah, back home for this.
And now you're president and he's dead. Oh, God. Paths we lead in life, huh?
Yeah.
And again, it could just as easily be us if we're not careful.
Exactly. I was only one. Today we're in mourning for Bernard, a father, husband, loyal servant of this country. Towards the back of the crowd, I spotted members of the Red Youth wearing red shirts and black bands mourning on their arms. They seemed ruly and were respectively bowing their heads. Good stuff. There was complete silence except for the sounds of the raindrops. Let me have a look here. Regardless of his ideology, this was a heinous act made towards a good man. We must end this circle of violence. Circes had a dream of a unified Swordland. In these next months, we need to fulfill his dream and band together. Yeah, hatred begets hatred, but there is only one way to overcome this vicious cycle. We must unite against the evil of this world. I would now like to recite one of the poems that he left us. We rise towards the sun. Those who died, died fighting. They are now buried in the sun. No need to mourn. There is a raid in the sun. A moment of silence, please. During the silence, all that was heard were the ravens.
Caw, caw, caw.
Some attendees started clapping, some crying. The coffin was lowered into the grave by the gravekeepers. After a couple of minutes, Bernard was with the soil, no more. As we bid farewell to Bernard, I want to close with the words every sword lives by. Amogna Westcore.
Vecton, sister!
With applause, I stepped down from the podium. It was time to leave. The widow thanked me with a soft and defeated voice before we dispersed. On my way back to the car, I couldn't get the eyes of Bernard's daughter, nor the faltering voice of his wife out of my head. Would Deanna, Monica, and Frank look the same way if something happened to me? Pt3 put his hand on my shoulder.
That was a good speech, Anton.
I sensed only respect from his voice. Thank you. I mean it.
I know you do. Come on, it's time to go. We've got work to do.
He was right. We had work to do. So much more to do. I realized that the rain had stopped, and I looked up. The black clouds slowly dispersed, and sunbeams enlightened our surroundings. As someone once said, even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. Hope was still on the horizon.
Right. So, how'd you think of that?
Damn, man, it's getting heavy. How do you think about my term so far?
I think we're off to a pretty reasonable start. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us.